I found something interesting. I mentioned about Okamura-san, Mihoko Okamura-san, who used to work with Daisetz Suzuki for the last 15 years of his life. And I've known her talking so many times, and also meeting in Kyoto. She passed away maybe 5 years ago, but this is something I stumbled into, that there was a TV program and Okamura-san was interviewed by Kanemitsu, another person who was into this spirituality stuff. So they visited Kanazawa, where Suzuki Museum, if you call that, is there. And in that location, she had the conversation with Kanemitsu. And it started with the nothingness, and I started to read it, and I thought, wow, this is so good. This is in Japanese, in NHK, I think, yeah. The title of the program is The Era or Generation of the Mind, or something like that. So let me just jump into it. I hope you enjoy it. I think this is really good. So there at the location of the word mu was posted. So that's the beginning of this conversation between Okamura-san and Kanemitsu. Okamura started saying that here are many words of mu, nothingness, laid out. When I met Daisetsu, I was 15 years old. So this is in New York. We talked in English, and then he gave her the story of mu, nothingness. So that's what this happened, reminded her. So she asked, what is mu, nothingness? Then he picked up the piece of paper and then put the word of mu from the Chinese character and laid out, how many mu-related words are. For example, muso is so is like a phase, so phase of mu, and the other one is called mushin. Shin is mind, so mushin means no mind. So those have the meaning related to Buddhism, and he wrote a line, and he mentioned there are so many of them, and that's the paper that is posted here. And then she says she was in 10 teenagers at the time. So there are lots of life problems at the time. So she was talking about her, my problem, so and so, or something like that. And then he wrote this to her. And so this is what is picked up from the book. And on the back at the cover, oh yeah, that's right. So she's showing exactly the one that he wrote down, is the wording from Confucius, starting from age 15, start to get into school and study with some spirit to study, desire to study. So pointing the words from Confucius, at age 30, you start to work, stand alone. And age 70, listen to hear from others, and no big deal. I'm just improvising how to translate this. It's a bit difficult in English. It's not against the word coming in, but go with the flow without going over the hurdle. So there are many of those from age 15, 30 to 60, 70, and so forth. And Daisetz said, you are right here at the 15 years old. So they are still 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and on. And Confucius stopped writing at age 70. But Daisetsu went further. There must be something more. And then he said, you are still in this point, and you have so much more to go. So that way, Daisetsu wrote the map. It's like a map of human life, and then to give a sense of comfort. Don't worry, this is what you are to do. So Kanemitsu says, yeah, about you being young. Okamura says, yeah, you are still in this area. So that's the evidence right here. So from here, narrator side story says, what is that world of mu or nothingness? What was that he wanted to communicate to? So they go on to remember, she is to remember the words and the behavior, trying to get the root of it. So Kanemitsu says, as I see Okamura-san today, I see you today, he tried to remember when was the first time of meeting her. And then I realized that when I was in Kyoto and about to move to Tokyo, so it was like 50 years ago or even more. So there are a talk of persons, Kaneko, Soga, and Daisetsu. And at the time, Daisetsu was over 80 years old. So he came down from the car, out of the car, and Okamura-san was there. And so he thought, who is this young person? And Suzuki was talking in English, so understood that, well, I didn't mean to get to talk about this. But anyway, that's just the story of how Kanemitsu meeting with Okamura. In any way, and right there is the word mu, nothingness. And the mu and the Buddhism has a strong or close relationship. So what is the foundation thinking behind mu? Okamura-san has been spending so much time with Daisetsu, so you may not have known much about Buddhism. How did you get the idea digested? And what is your sense of the Buddha's Dharma, law? So I want to ask you about those. So even if you were told as mu, nothingness, there's nowhere to start to digest. If you are told there's nothing, everything is here. So that was Kanemitsu's talk, and that is then Okamura's turn to respond. So if you are asking the ultimate point, and this is what I think, Okamura think, the ultimate is that but at the beginning, when I was 15 years or so, the Buddha is like Amida Buddha or whatever. So there's that statue. So the people say this is the Buddha. And then you go there and put your hands together and pray. So that's all she knew. So when she went to listen to Daisetz's lecture in New York, when she was living, because her parents moved from Japan to New York, so she happened to be there. Anyway, so she went to the lecture where there are about 100 people or so sitting there, and there are students from of course, America, and also the professors were sitting in there. That was Columbia University. And there, so she was 15 years old to go there. So everybody can come, anybody can come at the time. And there, Daisetz started to say, today's talk is a talk about beyond the time and the space. So that's the beginning. And with the little quiet space after that, and he said, it's the story of Buddha. So this is the beginning. So it's about beyond time and space. What can it be? So she thought about it, but there's nothing that she can grasp, even if you try. So I was just a little kid, yet have some problems of young life at the time. So I mentioned, Okamura mentioned to Daisetz, this is my problem, so forth. And then, along with those talk, Daisetz says, Mihoko-san, Mihoko is her name, Okamura Mihoko-san, there's nothing to start with. At the beginning, nothing. And that was the answer. At the time, he didn't say mu. He said, at the beginning, there's nothing, Mihoko-san. So go beyond the dimension. He didn't say that, but it meant to be sounded like that. So there's another dimension. What's the sense of it? But she couldn't follow. What could there be any additional dimension to what we've got? That was her thought. And still, because of her problems in life doesn't go away. And Kanemitsu says, yeah, that sounds right. And Okamura says, in front of her is the problem. And on that one, I'm just focusing on it. So that was what she felt. Yet she stayed there with him, meaning visiting her every day after her school. This is in New York again. And Daisetz was lecturing at Columbia University. And even if there's no way of grasping what this is, but I stayed there. And then eventually heard the word nothingness in English when he lectures. And that's about mu, nothingness. And then after coming back, so he asked, or she asked, what is the meaning of nothingness? And then he said, it's beyond time, space. So Buddha cannot be measured, Mihoko-san. And Kamemitsu says, yeah, that may sound understandable. And Okamura says it's about infinite space and eternal situation. So Daisetsu says. So if I hear that eternal time dimension, okay, we are the eternal or infinite. How they fit together doesn't have any feeling about it, but somewhere there's a sense. You cannot count because counting is beyond the number, and you cannot calculate, measure, and do anything with it. And the Kanemi says, that's right. And Okamura-san says, yes. So there's that sense or awareness. So mu, nothingness, is usually contrast against is. How to nothingness, the opposite of nothingness, there is. So there's a contrast between those, nothing and something. So there's that, how do you call this? Facing each other kind of situation. And Daisetsu says, when you talk about measuring or calculating, Mihoko-san, only you can do that in the world of U. There's mu is nothingness, U is isness. Contrasting to nothing is there is. So it has to be on the other dimension. Because, and then Kanemi says, yeah, that's right, mu cannot be measured. So that's the kind of a place where Buddha is beyond time and space. And therefore, you cannot measure or calculate. It's eternal and infinite. And then this word mu, that she may be pointing this at this video. I'm reading the wording part of it. It's a very nice writing, pointing that the mu itself is Buddha, is what he's pointing. So from those, gradually start to get the sense, even limited what I knew, Okamura knew at the time, and then to realize, okay, there's something that you cannot measure, calculate, and what you can calculate is something that exists. And so thinking, and then Daisetsu said, Okamura said, Daisetsu-san, why do you have to talk about such thing? Why is Buddha necessary? So she asked him. In other words, why man need religion or Buddha or God? Why do we need to seek for that? She asked. And Daisetsu responded, human has a karma. And then what that karma is the next question. Okay, it's 20 minutes, I'm getting tired, so I'm gonna stop here. And I'd like to come back afterward, maybe tomorrow. So that's again is the story of Okamura reflecting on the time when she spent time in New York with Daisetz. And in this setting, she was in Kanazawa, nearby Kyoto, where the museum, or whatever the term, but commemorate Daisetz's work with some stuff there. I've been there. And after meeting Okamura-san, and she was in charge of that museum. And that's where this conversation took place between Okamura-san and Kanemitsu-san, who is the interviewer, and talking about Buddhism and nothingness and what's the meaning of time and space beyond time and space or anything like that. And I will continue maybe tomorrow on this. Thank you. I spent Mihoko-san, we have such a great time. I have a picture with her smiling, and she passed away, but I'm so happy that she's alive in this session. I just opened up and found it. Thank you.